I invested years of my life saving our ailing family business, only to be betrayed by its subsequent collapse. This is the greatest form of revenge I have experienced. I devoted practically my entire life to the family business, devoting my career in technology to its success. When the business was experiencing a particularly challenging period, I made the decision to abandon my promising career in technology in order to save the business. My family rewarded my efforts by choosing to make my brother, the sole inheritor, is the individual responsible for this betrayal. It is, without a doubt, the most egregious act of disloyalty and disrespect I have ever experienced. In response, I have chosen to pursue my own endeavors and start a new venture. To provide context, I will briefly describe the circumstances surrounding my great-grandfather's business. He built a small importing company that had been passed down through generations. My father and grandfather had invested significant time and effort into developing it. However, when I was 24, a tragedy struck the family. My father was involved in a severe accident that resulted in significant brain damage. My grandfather had established a modest importing company that had been passed down through generations. My father and grandfather had invested considerable effort and resources into developing the enterprise, which was experiencing a period of considerable growth. However, at the age of 24, a significant setback occurred within the family. My father was involved in a tragic accident that resulted in severe brain damage. Following a nearly 2-year period of paralysis, I and my brother were left to assume responsibility for the business. My brother, however, was unwilling to accept this burden and withdrew from the enterprise. I was unable to abandon a venture that I knew my father held in high regard. My grandfather had passed away when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and I was aware that he would have been disheartened if I had not taken up the mantle. I had recently commenced a promising career in technology, but I made the decision to leave it behind and I have no regrets. I have dedicated the best years of my life to this business, working hard to ensure its continued success. At approximately 9 or 10 years of age, I was aware that my father would be devastated if no one in the family assumed responsibility for the business. I had recently commenced a position in the technology sector, which offered considerable potential for advancement. However, I ultimately decided to leave this promising opportunity and I do not regret my decision. I have dedicated the majority of my adult life to this business, working tirelessly to ensure its success. The enterprise was ultimately successful and flourished. While it did not achieve the level of monumental success that we had hoped for, it did generate the highest profits it had seen in decades. However, the hard work that I had invested in the company was undone when my brother, who had never contributed a single day's work to the company, inherited it. This was a particularly jarring experience, as my father passed away last month, and upon investigation, it was discovered that my late father had left almost the entirety of the company to my brother. I was still the CEO and would receive a considerable salary, but my brother was made the owner and ultimately bore the responsibility for all decisions. I was taken aback by this turn of events and, to be frank, it was a source of considerable disappointment. I had invested a great deal of time and effort into the company, and my father's decision came as a shock. I sought counsel from my mother, who informed me that my father had discussed this with her before he passed away. This was another unexpected turn of events. Their rationale behind this decision was that my brother needed to learn to assume responsibility. I had invested a great deal of time and effort into the company, and my father's decision came as a betrayal. I asked my mother if she had any idea about this, and she informed me that my father had discussed this with her before he passed away. This was another shock to me. Their rationale behind this decision was that my brother needed to learn how to take responsibility. The other alternative would be for me to guide him, which would be beneficial for him. My mother attempted to persuade me by stating that I would still be making the same amount of money. However, it is not about money. I believe that my hard work has been disrespected by this decision, and I deserve better than this. I did not want to be responsible for my brother's upbringing. After much deliberation, I have decided to resign from the company. I am unwilling to work alongside my brother, and I have accumulated a considerable amount of savings that I can rely on for the time being until I have identified a suitable alternative career path. I was aware that my experience and reputation would make it relatively straightforward for me to secure a suitable position, so I was not concerned about this aspect of my decision. I therefore resigned before my brother commenced his employment. I will now describe my brother. Even as a child, he displayed a tendency towards laziness, irresponsibility, and a history of squandering his money on frivolous items. He has a penchant for spending, but has never attempted to generate income. During our childhood, my brother was fairly well off, and he adopted a lifestyle that he could afford without ever considering how he would pay for it. In other words, he took the money for granted. I have already mentioned how he refused to step up when my father got sick and needed someone to take responsibility for the company. Regardless, at first I was still hoping that he would try to fix his ways and take good decisions. Now that he was the sole inheritor, he was reluctant to provide financial assistance, asserting that he was already aware of the best course of action. He expressed discontent with my decision to resign and stated in a rather impolite manner that he could manage on his own. It became evident that he lacked the necessary expertise to lead the company effectively. He began spending the company's funds recklessly, hiring friends for positions that they were not qualified for and organizing lavish parties to impress them. Meanwhile, our customers were a few months into the job. My brother decided that it was time to expand into manufacturing, which had been my father's dream. However, I had deliberately delayed this due to numerous complications. It seems that my brother believed he was sufficiently qualified to achieve this goal. Unfortunately, this proved to be a miscalculation. Less than 6 months after I left the business, it collapsed due to the poor quality of its products. The company incurred significant financial losses without securing a single distributor. It was evident that the business was experiencing severe financial difficulties, and my brother lacked the expertise to address the underlying issues. I was aware of these developments due to the circulation of information within the company. Subsequently, I began receiving communications from former employees who had remained with the company after my departure. They appealed to me to return and assist in stabilizing the enterprise. Initially, I was inclined to assist, but I ultimately decided against it. I came to recognize that my brother's actions demonstrated a lack of respect for my contributions and a disregard for the hard-earned resources I had invested in the company. I saw an opportunity to observe the unfolding of events and to allow my brother to experience the consequences of his actions. When my brother reached out to me, he acknowledged the challenges the business was facing and sought my assistance in addressing them. I inquired about his willingness to relinquish his position and to establish a transfer of ownership to me. If I were to choose to return to the company and my brother were to decline and instead offer me a financial incentive, I would decline. It was never about the money. I left because I deserved more respect. The company is now nearly bankrupt, and my brother is left with nothing. His friends had abandoned him, leaving him to pick up the pieces on his own. Most of the employees have been fired, and many others have quit. It truly is a sinking ship. It is important to note that I am not tempted to gloat after all. My brother had made my life a living hell when I was working at the company, and now he was getting his punishment. However, I also know that bankruptcy would have real consequences for the employees who had worked so hard for the company. I also feel awful that a business that has been in the family for generations has come crashing down into nothing. Nevertheless, I do not regret quitting. Update: I am gratified by the response to my post. I appreciate the support and encouragement I have received. It has been encouraging to read the comments and realize that I am not alone in this situation. I have taken some time to reflect on my next steps. I have decided to pursue a new job that will allow me to leverage my skills and experience. I am eager to see where this endeavor will lead and will keep you apprised of my progress. While it should be relatively straightforward, it is difficult to predict the outcome in the current economic climate. I wish you all the best of luck. It has been several months since I last updated you. I am pleased to announce that I have secured a new position. While it may not be as ideal as I had hoped, it is sufficient for the time being. A significant amount of effort has been invested in this endeavor, and I am still adapting to the demands of working for another individual rather than handling my own calls on a consistent basis. However, the experience has also been profoundly gratifying in terms of my family business. Many of you have inquired about my brother's activities during this period. Unfortunately, there is not much to report. The company has been significantly diminished, and as far as I am aware, he has sold the company and is experiencing financial challenges. He was forced to sell his luxury vehicles in the townhouse he had purchased. I am unaware of his current residence and I am also not in contact with my mother. I am aware that my father has left sufficient funds for her to live comfortably throughout her life. I would assist her if he ever required it. My issue is with my brother, not her. It is regrettable what occurred, but I have resolved the matter and am optimistic about my future. I appreciate your continued support. A significant development has occurred. I have not provided an update for some time. I now wish to share positive news. I am engaged in the establishment of a new venture. I was employed for approximately 1 year and have since been able to amass the necessary resources. I have assembled a small team of committed personnel, and we are currently engaged in the development of several promising initiatives. It has entailed considerable effort, but I am gratified by the outcome. As for my family business, it has ceased operations. It is a bittersweet conclusion to a lengthy legacy, but circumstances do not always align as we would hope. I am grateful for the insights gained along the way and am optimistic about the future. I would like to thank everyone for their support. It has been a remarkable journey. I will now embark on a new narrative. Narrative 2, my fiancée was unfaithful with my brother. Later on, I discovered she was pregnant, which led to a reconciliation. I am 28 years old and living. I had assumed that my romantic relationship with Selena, whom I had met in college and with whom I had an immediate connection due to her kind and extroverted behavior, would be a perfect love story. However, as is often the case with fairy tales, it did not have a happy ending. Our relationship was long distance, which made it challenging to maintain. A few years later, the challenges of a long-distance relationship, coupled with the differences in our cultural backgrounds, made it difficult for us to continue. After 2 years, we decided to end the relationship and pursue our individual paths. However, destiny had other plans for us. I have a younger brother named John. He is an extroverted individual who enjoys socializing and engaging in various activities. My younger brother, whom I will refer to as John, is a very extroverted individual. As the youngest in the household, he was not subjected to the same level of discipline as the rest of us for his actions, language, or morals. Despite my affection for him, our relationship is somewhat distant. My parents consistently prioritized John's needs over mine, likely because he was the youngest. I rarely interacted with my parents and brother, except on specific occasions or at social gatherings. While I did not harbor any ill will towards them, the manner in which they treated me led to a certain degree of emotional distance. My brother would frequently visit my residence under the influence of alcohol, and I afforded him the necessary space to rest. He was a highly decorated member of the SS, and he has no employment and is dependent on his parents' financial support due to his outgoing nature. Selena reappeared in my life, and John began working as a bartender at a renowned establishment. My father eventually grew weary of his conduct and realized that he lacked the necessary qualifications to pursue a career in this field. Consequently, he decided to pursue a new direction. JN extended an invitation to me to attend the party. The event was hosted by him in the club, which was very loud and crowded. I met numerous college friends, and there she was seated on a chair engaged in conversation with John, who appeared to be flirting with her. This observation evoked a chuckle, as it brought to mind the realization that I still held the same feelings for her that I had held all those years ago. I experienced a sense of rejuvenation, as if we were still together. I waved towards her, and she walked towards me and hugged me. We engaged in conversation and shared information about our lives. It was an incredible feeling. JN approached me, and he was surprised to find that we knew each other. I left the club, and we exchanged contact information. Her behavior indicated that she might be interested in rekindling our relationship. Her signals and the way she spoke to me were encouraging. One positive aspect was that neither of us had been in a serious relationship since our breakup. I was initially uncertain about pursuing a romantic interest again, but after so many years, I felt more optimistic. Our initial separation was conducted remotely, but we subsequently relocated to the same city. I was optimistic that our relationship might flourish. Selena and John were close friends, which was beneficial and unexpected. I was curious about the circumstances surrounding Selena and John's initial encounter, but I felt uneasy inquiring about it. Consequently, I decided to accept the situation and allow the relationship to unfold naturally. We began a romantic relationship and spent a great deal of time together. attempting to compensate for the lack of physical contact that had occurred after a few months. I proposed to her at my parents' house, where I was going to ask her to marry me. I felt that asking for a relationship was an inadequate response to my feelings for her, and I wanted to be clear about my intentions. After dinner, I escorted her to my room, where I displayed my childhood photographs. We engaged in light-hearted conversation for a brief period, after which I took a moment to compose myself. I then presented her with a diary containing letters I had written for us. She opened it and discovered a ring and a card, which asked her if she would like to marry me. She looked at me with tear-filled eyes and hugged me tightly, saying yes. It was a heartwarming moment for both of us, and something that was going to change both of our lives. My parents already knew her and they liked her. I asked her if her parents would have any problems because of cultural differences, to which she replied that they would not. She replied that she would insist on the marriage and that it was her life, and that she wanted to marry me. We decided on a formal engagement party after she obtained her parents' permission. She requested that I meet her parents so that they could agree to this. We were still seated and conversing while consuming ice cream. John was while scrolling down on his phone. Selena was looking over him after every conversation as if she wanted him to join us. She had a bit of ice cream on her lips as I was about to wipe it off. John looked at her and wiped it with his thumb, looking at her seductively. I am a calm man, and here I lost my calmness. Both Selena and I were affected by this. John laughed, which was difficult for me to see. He looked at me apologetically and said, "Don't mind us. We are just really close best friends." John interjected, saying that his brother would never mind and that he knows how best friends act. I laughed and immediately asked them where they both met. Their faces lit up with smiles. They both looked at each other in a concerned manner. I looked at them, giggling, and asked whether I had asked an offensive question. Finally, Selena replied and informed me that she had met him in the hospital when he had been involved in an accident back in December. This was a falsehood, a complete fabrication. John was out of the country back in December. The expression on John's face eventually confirmed the falsehood. John attempted to cover it up, but I intervened and stated that it was acceptable for him and Selena to withhold the truth if they wished, but that lying was not an option. He explained that they had met at a party where John had become ill after excessive alcohol consumption, and Selena had provided assistance. A week later, we both went to meet Selena's parents. I can assure you that it was not an easy thing to do. Her father was very strict, but after insisting and with the help of Selena's mother, he finally agreed. In fact, it took 3 to 4 meetings to get this done. However, he is a very nice guy, and to be honest, I would do the same. For my daughter Selena and John's relationship was indeed like that of best friends. After the arrival of Selena, I observed him becoming more responsible in understanding the situation. He used to ask me for advice, and Selena did as well. Both Selena and John were of the same age, so I postulated that this was the reason they had a strong connection with each other. Otherwise, there is no greater feeling than when her parents finally agreed. I had never believed in destiny, but it was as if magic were at work, losing her and then finding her again. This was to be a lifelong bond, though with an unexpected turn. She is a very humble woman, which is why I loved her. However, I did sometimes doubt her around JN. It has been a month since my last update, during which I experienced significant anxiety and overthinking as a result of Selena and John's behavior. This led to a heated and assuring argument between us a week before our engagement. Their touchy behavior and extreme closeness, particularly in light of John's past conduct around her, made I experienced a sense of nausea as a result of this escalation. The incident occurred during Selena's stay at my parents' beach house, where we were organizing a beach party. While initially intended to be a fun event, it ultimately turned out to be quite unpleasant. Selena was wearing a bikini, and she appeared to be quite attractive. She was accompanied by her friends and cousins, who seemed to be enjoying themselves. I went out to arrange the lighting for the night party. Took approximately 2 hours to arrange, as I was heading toward Selena on the beach. What I saw was so disturbing that I almost vomited. Selena was giving John a lap dance, although it was not a conventional lap dance. She was literally all over him, and he was rubbing his hands over her SS. I ran towards the scene in anger. I loudly demanded an explanation, prompting others to turn and stare at me. Selena appeared visibly distressed, while John repeatedly apologized and insisted that their interaction had been a mere social challenge. I grabbed her hand and led her to our room, where I angrily punched the wall and verbally lashed out at her. Selina appeared visibly terrified and disgusted. She asserted that there was no romantic involvement between them. She informed me that if she were to be unfaithful to me or attracted to my brother, she would have informed me on the day I met her. She also stated that I was merely overanalyzing the situation and that John was her closest friend. Prior to meeting her, they both enjoyed a great deal of social interaction. She stated that I was being overly concerned and that she would henceforth maintain her boundaries. She also asserted that I am a chronic overthinker and that it is normal to experience feelings of insecurity, but that I should give her a chance and trust her. Did I forget about it? No, I thought of it again and again. That brief glimpse of them was quite difficult to forget. I was unable to sleep for several days, but both individuals maintained their distance. My mother was displeased with JN for acting like an SS and scolding him. He apologized before that and I forgave him. The day of the engagement arrived, and everything proceeded relatively smoothly. We decided to sell and celebrate our engagement in the chapel. We took our own vows, which was enjoyable and emotionally and romantically beautiful. She looked extremely beautiful and like a dream in front of me. We danced and had a great time. It was the most beautiful thing ever to happen in my life. If you had told me it would have happened 4 years ago, I would have laughed. JN was quite inebriated, and he and Selina engaged in a rather energetic dance. Selina, on the other hand, does not consume alcohol, so I also abstained. After the party, we both engaged in a brief period of prayer and reflection. She repeatedly kissed my face, which was endearing. I then escorted her to my residence, where we engaged in intimate physical contact. It was challenging for me to maintain control. I was unable to resist the temptation and asked her if she wanted to do it. She held my hands and told me that she wanted to wait until marriage to engage in sexual intercourse. I laughed and agreed with her. A few days later, while returning to my place, I decided to meet Selina after work. Upon entering her lane, I saw John leaving her house. I went inside. I waited inside for her to speak about John's arrival, but she did not discuss him. Instead, she served dinner, which I found to be lacking in flavor. My thoughts were continually drawn to the matter, and I found myself asking Selina about John. She replied that John was not feeling well. He subsequently visited to obtain medication. I was unable to sleep that night, preoccupied with the possibility that her behavior might be indicative of a more serious underlying issue, given the circumstances. I found myself questioning whether my concerns were justified or whether I was merely overthinking the situation. She had already reassured me, yet I was still unsure. I was concerned that my suspicions were being perceived as spying. I was preoccupied with the idea that my thoughts were negatively influencing my perception of Selina. I perceived her as suspicious due to her mannerisms, which included keeping her phone upside down and not sharing her password with me. I never observed her using her phone in front of me, and she consistently had her internet off, which seemed unusual. The following morning, I inquired about Selina's interest in getting married next month. I proposed a destination wedding, hoping to collaborate with her on the planning. However, her response was unresponsive and she inquired as to whether I would be amenable to waiting if she wished to be promoted at her hospital. She was therefore unable to avoid taking leaves for any purpose. She replied to my messages and calls frequently, but now her replies are delayed and she is frequently irritated. I therefore gave her the space she needed. I would like to provide an update to the previous message. It has been 2 months since the last update, and I am unsure how to convey the entirety of my situation in words. However, I feel that your overthinking is not warranted. Our story was a fairy tale and a dream of my life, which turned in a short period of time. My mental health was significantly affected. I am currently undergoing psychological treatment. After receiving a brief text and exhibiting a lack of interest in meeting, she cited her heavy workload as the reason for her refusal. I had been contacting JN and Selina to ascertain whether they were together, but they never answered my calls, which further contributed to my confusion. I was experiencing insomnia, ruminating on the possibility that my fiancé was engaging in an affair with my brother. Instead of making assumptions that might not be substantiated, I decided to investigate further. On the weekend, I drove towards her place and knocked on the door, but nobody answered after knocking 3 or 4 times. I stepped back and suddenly saw John's car on the side of the road. My anxiety increased, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I called her, but she didn't pick up my call. I was going to call John, but then I decided to stop and go back inside my car. After a while, I finally saw John coming out of her house. My overthinking the situation unfolded as I had anticipated. My suspicions were confirmed when I discovered that she had been meeting with him behind my back. I was unaware of the nature of their relationship, but I understood that meeting with someone behind my back constituted a minor form of cheating. This led to a state of mind that was akin to a maniac, characterized by thoughts of insecurity, inability to eat, sleep, or focus on work, and a numbness that affected my body. I was unable to cope with this situation, and as soon as John left, I received a call from Selena. I asked her if I could come over, and she immediately agreed. I cleaned up the mess. I wiped away my tears and proceeded to enter the premises. She proceeded to spend several hours with me, during which she embraced me tightly and kissed my face for a considerable length of time. I then sat on the sofa, and she placed her head on my lap while consuming one of the macarons. I observed her innocent countenance and was unable to fathom that she could engage in such an act. Selena was a deeply religious and morally upright individual. After spending a considerable length of time in each other's company, I felt the urge to visit the washroom. Upon completion of my ablutions, I observed something that would alter the course of my life. I was so overwhelmed by this discovery that I nearly succumbed to a panic attack. The attack was initiated by a positive pregnancy test, which was discarded in haste. Upon taking the test in my trembling hands, I experienced a profound emotional shock. The test represented a painful revelation, akin to a dagger piercing my heart. Selena was banging on the door of the bathroom, exhibiting a combination of disbelief, fear, and other emotions. I opened the door with the test in my hand and tears in my eyes. She looked at me in disbelief, fear, and a multitude of other emotions. I was unable to find words to express my profound betrayal, which I expected from JN but not from her. I inquired of her in a stammering voice how she could have done this to me. She then got on her knees and began to beg me, requesting that I give her the opportunity to explain and tell the truth. I lacked the courage to do so, and thus I left immediately. I was not expecting her actions to have such a detrimental impact on my life, as she was the one who had previously helped to repair it. Perhaps the truth had been in plain sight, but I had been heedless to see it. I proceeded to my parents' house, and each detail began to make sense. Both of them were calling me repeatedly, and she was manipulating me. Time was the reason for her repeated apologies, which were unnecessary. She had lied to me about her virginity and was pregnant with my own brother. Upon reaching my parents' house, I informed them of the situation. JN was present and displayed no outward signs of remorse. Instead, I felt a surge of anger, which I channeled into a confrontation with my parents. I accused them of being complicit in my difficulties, claiming that they had failed to raise me properly. They had failed to provide affection and guidance, and I felt that they had contributed to my current situation. His own brother, mom and dad repeatedly expressed remorse, and Selena exhibited distress and sought physical contact with me. However, I did not reciprocate. It was their responsibility to address his problematic behaviors and past actions. He had the potential to be a better individual. I consulted with Selena's parents to discuss the matter. When they arrived, I presented the pregnancy test and they expressed disdain. Selena's mother physically assaulted her and questioned her parenting skills, challenging her to justify her actions and her religious beliefs. While I am not particularly concerned with religious beliefs, her actions and lack of moral standards made me feel uneasy. I had known her previously and found it difficult to believe her actions. I am prepared to swear on the Bible that I will never be able to trust anyone again. I ended my engagement with Selena on that day, as she was pregnant with my brother. They decided to get married. Update 3, our family decided that JN would marry Selena with shared guilt and secrets. However, the most surprising aspect was yet to come. Selena's situation deteriorated significantly. The only person who did not suffer the consequences of his actions was JN. Selena, on the other hand, endured significant hardship. JN was a morally reprehensible individual. He was known for his promiscuity and lack of commitment. The prospect of marriage and pregnancy was overwhelming for him. Selina's decision to accept the engagement was not driven by love for me but by her desire to win JN back. She openly admitted this to me. When JN was confronted about his commitment, he immediately lost interest. I initially stayed out of the situation, but I was privy to all of Selina's mother's communications. She frequently contacted me to express her distress over John's insistence that Selina terminate the pregnancy. Selina came to recognize that she was merely another conquest for him and regretted her actions. Her mother did not permit her to terminate the pregnancy due to their religious beliefs. The initial period of infatuation, during which Selina hoped to elicit feelings of jealousy from John through our relationship, ultimately resulted in significant personal and emotional turmoil. For John, this was yet another inconsequential and ill-considered decision, as he demonstrated no regard for the well-being of his child. In addition to these experiences, I was also traumatized. I was on medication and attended numerous orientations for mental health, but my condition did not improve. Consequently, I applied for a job abroad and decided to leave the country for a while. I had no one who cared for me. My parents were merely fulfilling their obligations, and John never even apologized to me. Given my experiences, I expected no better from him. Despite the worst thing I faced, I felt bad and wished her the best for the baby. This was due to the way she manipulated me, and she was also manipulated by him. John was the biggest person with a charismatic personality, and a sudden cessation of love and affection can elicit a psychotic response. Regardless of the circumstances, the individual may experience a loss of cognitive function. The individual may have been capable of becoming a father and a good husband, thereby providing her with a stable life. She ultimately elected to become a single mother, and my family agreed to provide child support. Additionally, we provided her with a house for herself and the infant. I eventually completed my interview and relocated to another country. However, the pain of the past remained a constant presence, akin to a looming shadow that served as a constant reminder. The irony was not lost on either of us. She traded her promising future for years of remorse, while my brother experienced a similar fate. I was simultaneously angry and relieved to see that she recognized her mistake. However, John continued to act in a way that was unacceptable to my parents, yet he did not seem to care and did not demonstrate any inclination to change. I have moved on from my past and have learned valuable lessons, particularly the importance of trusting my instincts and following my gut.